Now, once you have completed step 1, 2, and 3, you should have something like this. You should have a file named ORM underscore practice.py, right? And you would have copied and pasted all the code in here. And on top of that, you should have requirements.txt, and this came from us freezing all the different dependencies necessary for this project. Now, what I want to do next is to actually create a database named ORM underscore practice.db. To do that, I am going to get into Python's REPL, and I'm going to first import this script. So ORM underscore practice, and then I would create the database. So I would have to namespace orm.practice to get access to this DB here. And I'll do db.connect. Now, once it says true, you should see a new file being created, orm underscore practice.db. Jump to our database browser that we have just downloaded. You can go ahead and open the database. Just select the database. You would see that the database exists, but there are no tables, no data whatsoever. So these classes are typically called model because it is a class that sort of connects with your database. What you want to do next is to create the columns for each of these tables as well as the tables itself. So to do that, you can type orm practice.db.create underscore tables. This takes in class names, so store, warehouse, and product. We don't actually have access to store just like that, right? I'm just going to cancel this command and I'm going to type store, and you can see that store was not defined. Instead, you would have to namespace store this way. Now, there is a more convenient way to do this. If you remember, you could import all the different modules, classes, variables into a specific environment by typing, something like from ORM practice import all, right? Star asterisk means all. Now, when I type store, I have access to it. When I type warehouse, I have access to it. I don't need to namespace it anymore. You want to be very careful whenever you do something like import all. It's usually not recommended. The reason is you don't exactly know what variables and what modules are named, and potentially if you are importing many different scripts or modules into another existing script, you could potentially be overriding certain names. Let's say I had another file named hello, and I import all, but somehow within hello.py I've also defined what db means, and later on when I'm using db, I could be referencing the wrong db. So you want to be very careful when using import all. In this case, I know exactly what I'm doing, and I know that there will not be any name clashes, so that's why I'm doing it. To create tables, I no longer need to type ORM practice. I can just type db create tables, and I would pass in a list. So store, warehouse, and product. Hit enter, and let's refresh this. On a Mac, all I have to do is press Command plus R. On a Windows, I'm guessing it's going to be Control and R. And as you can see, 3 tables have been created along with the columns or the fields. So in this case, name, description, warehouse ID, store, name, warehouse, location, as well as store ID. Now you may notice that you have created add as well as updated add for every different table. The reason why we're getting created add and updated add, even though we didn't define it within each model, is because these models inherit from base model. And within base model, I have defined these 2 different columns, and therefore every class or every model in this case that inherits from base model would also automatically have created at as well as updated at.